Veritas Aquitus by Bones Boy 15, Chapter 12, Irresistible. An old friend of yours, Emerald? Cinderfall asked the dumbstruck girl. To say she was just as intrigued by this discovery as Kerma was an understatement. Kerma could see it in her eyes. She was not only intrigued, but highly entertained. This woman is dangerous, Kerma thought as he felt out the three Aura's reserves. His eyes narrowed behind his sunglasses. Yep, extremely dangerous. Emerald, yo, Cinder, asked you something? Mercury Black said when they didn't get a response. He looked at her with a smirk and then at the blonde. You guys got a history, I take it? Something like that, yeah, Naruto said softly before he stepped around the shocked girl and went towards his team's bedroom with Kurama not far behind him. Naruto stopped with his hand on the door and his hair shadowed his eyes. You should get to the dorms before a teacher reports that you're missing. The door was open. The two teens disappeared into the room before the mint-haired girl, Emerald, could say something as she turned to stop him. Ouch, talk about getting the cold shoulder, Mercury mused with a smirk. He ducked as the Leon card flew past his head and shaved a few hairs off of his head before it embedded itself into the wall. Yikes, go, what gets you so scruffled? Get dumped by the wannabe hero? Mercury, shut up before I rip your tongue out. Emerald glared at the teen with narrowed eyes before she walked away with her head slightly hung. Mercury tucked his hands into his pocket. Yep, she got dumped. It's a wonder that you're still single, Mercury. Really, it is. Cinder rolled her eyes as she followed after her fellow female. Mercury frowned and followed after her. Hey, what is that supposed to mean? He didn't receive an answer. So want to fill me in on what the hell just happened out there? Kurama asked his team leader after he shut the door behind him. Haku and Sasuke looked up with confusion written on their faces. Not now, Kurama, Naruto mumbled as he sat down on the edge of his bed. He dropped his head into his hands. What happened? Sasuke asked. Kurama scowled and pointed to the door. Uzumaki knows three people who say they're from Haven, but from what documents I could find on them, they ain't that truthful. What documents could you find? Haku asked. Any and all required to enter into a school, good at average grades and health reports along with their fighting styles. Haku frowned. Is that wrong? Kurama scowled. It's all too average. Haku, even some kids who are average or blend into the crowd have something off about them, something that can make them stand out. Those three, they had not missed a day of school due to sickness, but never got an award for being present. Or maybe they ran out. Sasuke suggested. Maybe you made a mistake. No fucking way. Kurama glared at him. This is me, Uchiha. If there's one thing I don't fuck up, it's my information. My facts are what keep me afloat. Those three things they're not students. Kurama glared at his seated leader, and I want to know why one of them knew your name when she is reportedly from Sanctum. She's my ex. Naruto sighed out after a tense moment. Don't play with us, Uzumaki, Kurama growled. I am not in the mood for jokes. It's not a goddamn joke, Otsutsuki. Naruto snapped back as he shot to his feet. All those things I told you, I've had an emerald. I got a girlfriend. Guess what? I was being honest. I was talking about Emerald. Why the hell should I believe that when this is the first time you've ever gave her name? Because I didn't want to think about her anymore, alright? Naruto balled his hands into fists to the point that his knuckles turned white. He turned away from the fondness as he continued with a tight voice. I didn't want to end the relationship. You were in love with her? Haku's statement was soft, but it hit Naruto like a ton of bricks. His eyes squeezed shut and he gave a short nod. Haku walked over to his partner's side and put a hand on his shoulder. Naruto, we don't blame you for falling in love with the girl. Speak for yourself, Kurama grumbled as he crossed his arms. He turned away with a scowl when Haku glared at him. It's not that, Naruto said softly. He looked at Haku with pained eyes, tears barely contained with him. I was so close to being done, to forgetting about her. You idiot, Naruto looked at Sasuke when he spoke. You never forget your first girlfriend. Sasuke shook his head. He crossed his arms and leaned against the foot of his bed. The first girl you truly love, that you really have feelings for. That doesn't just go away. It's impossible. Part of you will always love her because she was the first to show you that you can. Kurama shook his head. Wow, Chiha, your smut must have got into your brain. Shut up, Kurama, like you're one to talk. When's the last time you had a real emotional connection with a girlfriend? Sasuke asked with a frown directed at his partner. Kurama arched a brow and pursed his lips together. Emotionally only? No physical? Emotionally only? Alright, fine. Call me an emotional virgin then, whatever. Kurama scoffed and leaned against the wall. If you're not going to help, maybe you should prepare yourself for bed, Haku said lowly. Yeah, fine, Kurama muttered as he grabbed his clothes and stopped at the bathroom door before he looked at Naruto. Once whatever is over, you're going to tell me everything you know about that girl and what she knows about you. Go, Haku barked. Fine, geez, for alm's sake, I'm going. Kurama grumbled as he ducked into the bathroom and slammed the door shut behind him. Freaking sociopath, Sasuke mumbled as he shook his head. He watched Haku guide Naruto away from the bathroom door and over to their side of the room. When Naruto was seated on Haku's bed across from him, Sasuke leaned forward. Naruto, you're my friend, and more importantly, our team leader. We need you to get a hold of yourself. I will. I wasn't expecting her to be right there when I turned around the corner. I mean, goddamn, she was right freaking there. Like a few hours ago, Yang and I were just... Oh god, Yang. Naruto groaned into his hands. Shit. How do I explain this to her? Do I even explain this to her? Knowing how Yang acts over her friends and family, I'm afraid of what you would do if you discovered there was a girl on campus who had broken her recently obtained boyfriend's heart. Haku mused. He looked at Naruto with a confident smile. I wouldn't go telling her right off the bat. Perhaps wait until after the festival ends and Emerald leaves Vale. I'd rather not get our recently revoked punishments back. You're talking like this girl will leave Vale after the festival. Remember, Kurama said she's not a student, and I'm inclined to believe that much. It's best to rip the bandage off in one go, then try to slowly remove it. Sasuke warned cautiously. If Yang really does care about you, she'll probably be more interested in keeping your attention on her and off of the old girlfriend. Naruto sighed and rubbed his head. Great. Anything else you guys want to know? Well, remember that question Sun asked you? Haku asked. Which one? Have you ever had sex with your ex-girlfriend? Yeah. On second thought, you should tell Yang. Haku decided. This girl screwed his friend physically and emotionally. She was not getting away with that while Haku had anything to say about it. Sasuke shook his head. No way. If she finds this out, she'll probably try to jump him in public. Tell her once Emerald disappears. Naruto groaned and flopped back on the bed. Could you guys offer any more contradictory advice? When did life become so complicated? When you turned 16, Sasuke said flatly. Isn't that how old you and Sakura were when you both... Shut up, Naruto, before I give you a real reason to cry. Haku sighed. Well, I suppose we're just going to act like this never happened then. Duh, we're guys. Kind of goes without saying. Sasuke and Naruto agreed. Just so we're clear. That night, Naruto stared at the ceiling as he thought about the dilemma that faced him in the morning. He told Kurama, Haku, and Sasuke everything about his relationship with Emerald. At the initial start of the relationship, she requested for reasons he didn't know, but now suspected led to nothing good, that he kept their meeting secret, and that she determined when and where they would meet. All hush-hush-like, and the thrill was awesome. The sex that came around a month later wasn't bad either. The thrill was increased tenfold with that aspect thrown in. Then the emotion started to build. Emerald let him take her out, let herself be seen with him by others, but still insisted his friends never discover them, that he tell no one, and that he used a fake name when they were out. They dined in often, always at his place, and he'd always have to make up some excuse to his friends afterwards that he felt horrible about. Looking back, it wasn't an ideal relationship, but then again, it was his first. Naruto was just stoked to have a pretty girl who was willing to spend time with him in all the ways a teenage boy wanted, and Emerald seemed to really like him then, too. So when she suddenly up and dumped Naruto a year before he graduated, it stupefied him. He begged and pleaded and all that cliche crap that happened in the romantic movies they watched. He wanted to know what he'd done wrong, and her answer hurt more than giving no answer at all. Nothing. Her voice was cold, and Naruto remembered staring at her back with tears pouring down his cheeks. You didn't do anything wrong, and that's the problem. Then she left while he stood there, too shocked and heartbroken to say anything to try and stop her. Gone from Naruto's life for a whole year, practically two, right after he just hooked up with a new, awesome, funny, and sexy girl that seemed to really like him as much as he did her. And then she showed up at Beacon of all places as an exchange student. Lep really was a bitch sometimes. Naruto's life was finally getting back together. He was training to be a huntsman, leading his own team even. He had found new friends and even gained a third best friend in Haku, his partner since day one. He got to meet his childhood pen pal in person. He found himself a Yangle to call his girlfriend, and damn could she kiss. Not to mention her legs were creamy, her eyes were mesmerizing, and her smile was beautiful. Anyway, the point is, it was all going well. So freaking well, and then she showed up in his life again. Naruto sighed and closed his eyes. What the hell am I supposed to tell Yang? Silence answered him, and it made Naruto extremely uncomfortable. He never was one for silence. He thrived in noise. He loved attention, lived for it at one point, and in a way he still did. Naruto started to fiddle with his parents' wedding bands. He held them up and stared at them in the darkness while the soft, even breathing of his team slowly soothed him to sleep. What would you guys have me do? Naruto wondered. He closed his eyes and let his hand rest on his chest, gripped around the rings. If there was ever a time I really wished you guys were alive, it would be now. I could really use some parental wisdom right now. Poor John. These must have been colder than usual today, Naruto said as he watched the boy slink out of Professor Port's class with Haku at his side. It would seem so, Haku agreed. He watched with a raised brow as Yang blew Naruto a quick kiss before she followed her team back towards their dorm, while Naruto merely smiled at her. I take it you've yet to tell Yang about your problem? It's not a problem, so why make it one? We used to date, she broke it off, and I've moved on, Naruto said with a shrug. I don't want to make a big deal of it, and I doubt Emerald does too. We just didn't expect to see each other. All I have to do, if I don't want to blow this, is avoid her and pretend I don't know her when I can't. I believe that is a poor decision. Yeah, well, it's mine to make. Haku sighed. Very well, but when this backfires, don't blame me when I say I told you so. If, Haku, if it backfires. Naruto corrected with a raised finger and a grin. He interlaced his hands behind his head and began to walk towards the dorms. So want to go surprise Team Ruby with their permission slips for a night on Bell? Haku followed his teammates across campus with pursed lips. As they walked, Haku observed various teams and groups of students. He disliked what he saw. His fellow Beacon students were tense as they passed by, all unnerved by the Elysian forces that had been using Beacon as an impromptu base. The students from Haven fared no better, equally tense as though they expected to be attacked by someone. Eyes were shifty everywhere, and tensions were high. The smallest thing could set off a fight, Naruto said, as though he'd been reading his partner's mind. Haku glanced at him and noted that he'd not lost his relaxed posture, nor had his smile died down in the slightest. I'm astounded that you can be so relaxed with all this tension around us, Haku said softly. His gaze went to a couple of Haven students that walked by and narrowed slightly when he noticed them point at Naruto and whisper, They're debating whether or not I'm a faunus. Haku arched a brow. How did you know that? Naruto shrugged. Wouldn't be the first time someone did that. The birthmarks? Scars. Naruto corrected. He grinned over at his partner. What, you think I was born with these chick magnets? Come on, that'd be weird. As opposed to being born with silver eyes or blue hair, Haku countered. Those are rare, yeah, but not uncommon. Science can explain that. Facial things like mine? Nah, that's so not common. Even faunas don't have whiskers. Got these bad boys on my first birthday, Naruto answered nonchalantly. Fourth War? I really don't know how you want me to react to that, Haku said honestly. Don't want you to react, just want you to know. Naruto grinned. Not everyone wants you to react to their comments, dude. Some just want to inform. Take it with a grain of salt. Watch it. Don't they teach you in Atlas to look where you're going? Naruto and Haku looked off to the side where four familiar Beacon boys faced off against the team of Atlas, based on their white school uniform anyway. Naruto absently thought that Atlas's school needed some color in their attire. Oh look, we have the class jerk off, acting like a grade 8 dumbass. What a surprise. Naruto dropped his arms draped around his sides. He looked at Haku with an arched brow. So, shall we go remind Cardin what he's not supposed to do? Gladly. Haku nodded. The two partners walked over towards the small gathering that was slowly getting circled by teens from both schools. With little effort, Naruto made his way through the crowd with Haku beside him and gave a loud, obnoxious sigh that drew the group's attention. Cardin. Must we always meet like this? Naruto asked with a perturbed frown directed towards a massive teen. Cardin and his team froze when they saw the calm blonde scratch his head. Naruto's eyes snapped open and locked intently on his fellow team leader. Or do you need a reminder about how you're supposed to treat our guests? Cardin has a visible gulp before he looked around and took notice of everyone watching. He collected himself and crossed his arms over his chest as he looked away. Whatever, Uzumaki. Come on, guys. We got better things to do. Cardin told his team, who eagerly followed him through the crowd and away from Naruto. The crowd let out mumbled disappointments and slowly dispersed while Naruto smirked. And they say old dogs can't learn new tricks. The whiskered blonde turned to the Haven group and gave a small wave. Hi. We had that, Blondie. One of the girls from Haven group, the same one that had shouted before, interrupted him. Naruto looked down at her with an arched brow as he noted her pink eyes, which contrasted with her white attire and the short black hair that fell from her head. What he couldn't get over was her stature. The girl barely came up to his shoulders. She was so short, even Ruby managed to reach the bottom of his chin with her height. Easy, Kurosuchi. I don't think that the general would like it if we got in a fight. The young man that was easily twice her size, both by height and width, said with a nervous smile to the girl. He had a large nose and friendly dark eyes, while his hair was kept back in a red bandana. And with the hot head, you cost us a fight, buddy. Maybe you want to repay the favor. A teen with white hair that reached his shoulders grinned, revealing shark-like teeth that were in his mouth. He was as tall as Naruto was, and a bit the beefier in the muscle department. How could he tell? The shark boy had ripped his sleeves off of his jacket. Well, gotta give him points for creativity. Suketsu. Haku's voice broke Naruto's thoughts as his partner stepped forward. Haku looked at the white-haired teen and the last members of the four, a glasses-wearing boy that looked like a contrast to Suketsu, his hair a dull blue-gray as opposed to the white that curtained Suketsu's head. Chojuro, you two went to Atlas? Ah, Haku, good to see you again, Chojuro said meekly with a small smile as he adjusted his glasses. Yuki, what are you doing at Beacon? Suketsu asked, a brow raised. Thought you were apprenticing. Plans changed, Haku said stiffly as his gaze turned intense. Suketsu shivered and held his hands up in defense. Right, okay, I get the message. Naruto crossed his arms and smiled lightly. Friends of yours, Haku? You could say we had similar pastimes, Haku said carefully as he looked at his partner. He held his hands out. Suketsu and Chojuro, my partner and team leader, Naruto Uzumaki. Nice to meet you, Naruto said with a grin. A pleasure, Chojuro said with a small nod. Dude, doesn't seem so tough, Suketsu shrugged. Haku rolled his eyes. Yes, well, you were the same back when you started. Scrawny. Hey, if you'll notice, I'm not scrawny anymore, jackass, Suketsu snarled as he gestured to his arms. Naruto humphed. Impressed. What are those, 18, 20 inches? 21 and 2/3, Blondie, Sugetsu said with a smirk. Able to choke your punk ass out with ease? Sugetsu, let's try to be civil, the large teen said with a frown. He offered Naruto a smile. We are Sugetsu and Chojiro's teammates. I'm the team leader, Akatsuchi, and this is my partner, Kurosutsu. You're too nice, Akatsuchi, Kurosutsu grumbled as she crossed her arms over her chest and glared at Naruto. She squinted her eyes. You look familiar. Have we met before? No. Pretty sure I'd remember meeting you, Naruto said, a bit taken aback by her hostility. Unnerved by the glare that Kurotsuchi was giving him, Naruto turned his attention to Chojuro and Suigetsu. So you're Haku's old buddies, huh? Bet you've got tons of dirt on him. Suigetsu grinned slightly. You know, maybe you're not going to be so bad after all, Blondie. There was this one time when Haku had hurried to class one day and incorrectly tied his sash. Naruto, we were going to go assist Ruby, remember? Haku cut in firmly as he glared daggers at the white-haired teen. Naruto patted at Haku. You're no fun, Haku. Kurama and Sasuke broke you. Naruto. All right, Naruto said with a sad sigh. He gave the Haven students a two-fingered salute. Nice meeting ya, guys and girl. Maybe we'll meet up in the tournament. Better do some curls before we do, Blondie. Suigetsu returned with a cackle. As his team watched the two walk away, he looked at Chojuro with a smirk. So, would you get off the Blondie? Chojuro shuddered and adjusted his glasses again. It would be best to avoid him. His aura is massive, far larger than any of ours. Even when put together, it was so potent, I swear I saw it coming off of his skin. That's not normal, Kurotsuchi said with a frown. She glared at the two as they walked away. We should keep an eye on them. That blonde guy. I want to know why he looks so familiar. Maybe you've been dreaming about him. Piss off, Suigetsu. Meet up tonight near Yang to go over what we found. Let's do this. Ruby's voice was heard clear as day to Naruto as he leaned casually against the team's door. He quirked a smile when he heard Sun's voice. Naruto opened his eyes and nodded at his team as they stepped out of their room, dressed in their battle gear. Time to make an entrance, Naruto mused as he knocked on the girl's door. Kurama scoffed. Typical showboat. Seriously, not the time, Sasuke said with a disapproving shake of his head. Whatever. Naruto ignored his team as Ruby opened the door and looked at the grinning blonde in confusion. Hi Naruto. What's going on? Ruby asked. I think I should be asking you that, Naruto said as he looked over her new attire and then those of the other members in Team Ruby. His eyes lingered on Yang's new look for a moment before he looked back at the nervous 15-year-old. I mean, you're all dressed up for what looks to be a fun time. Sun's here, and even the nerd came. His hair really is blue, Kurama mused in surprise, while Neptune glowered at the whiskered blonde. Intellectual, whatever, nerd boy, Naruto said as he walked into the team room and proceeded to circle Yang with a white grin on his face. This, I like. Yeah? Yang grinned back at him and caught him by his jacket's collar. She leaned against him and traced her fingers up his arm while his hands held her hips. You should see what I am wearing underneath. Naruto's grin didn't fall in the slightest while Neptune choked on air. Is that a promise or a tease? Depends. Yang! Ruby protested with a slightly red face. She crossed her arms and scowled as the rest of Team Nox walked into their already slightly crowded room. Focus, Yang. The plan. Making plans without me? Ouch, Yang. Feelings are hurt, Naruto said with a pout. Yang winked at him and turned around in his arms to look at her sister. Lighten up, Ruby. Whisker Boy and his gang probably want in too. Like I said, you should always drag friends into trouble. Way more fun that way, Sun said with a grin. He looked at Neptune. Right? Debatable, Neptune said with a grunt as he looked over the new group. So, these are the other cool guys, huh? Nice to meet you too, nerd boy. Kerma greeted with a smirk. Intellectual. Neptune scowled at the faunus before he turned to a greatly amused son. I don't like him. Ah, I'm heartbroken, Kerma said dryly, a hand on his chest. The goggle head doesn't like me. However will I go on? Shut up, Otsutsuki. Weiss rolled her eyes. Bite me, Weiss. I think that's a proposition, Naruto stage whispered to his snickering girlfriend. He gave a small smirk to Kurama when he caught the flash of red that came up behind the sunglasses lenses. Naruto grinned back at Ruby and let his arm slide up to gently wrap around Yang's midsection. So, Rubes, what's your plan? Well, we were going to go out and investigate some more into the White Fang, Ruby said with a small smile to the fondness of her team. Weiss and I were going to go to the cross-continental transmit tower to look into the Shnee Dust Company records. Since I'm an heiress, I should naturally have access to everything about the company, Weiss said with a hint of pride. Ruby nodded. Right, and Blake was going to go to a White Fang meeting along with Sun here. I guess she could go with him. Yang said she's got a few contacts, and I guess Neptune was going to go with Yang. Haku, I don't understand what this, Ruby rapidly waved her hand in front of her neck, means. While Kurama and Sasuke laughed, Haku dropped his face into his hand as Naruto's arms tensed slightly and his gaze locked on with Neptune's. The blue-haired Raven student paled considerably when Naruto gave him a wide and forced grin. Ruby, we need to work on your social cues, Weiss said dryly. Blake rubbed her forehead and nodded in agreement while Yang smiled and looked back at her boyfriend. Clean already, Naruto? Don't you trust me? Oh, I trust you with my life, Yang. Naruto smiled down at her normally before his forced smile returned as he looked at Neptune, who looked just about ready to start dropping bricks. Him? Not with yours. I'll admit, he does look like he'd stick out a bit if he comes with me, Yang said with a pensive hum. The prep look is cute, but not exactly what you want to be wearing where we're going. Wait, I have an idea. Naruto grinned as he looked at Ruby. Why doesn't Neptune go along with you? Why Sasuke and Haku? Ruby blinked and frowned. Wait, but why is Haku going? Because our team has the permission slips. Your team needs to go to Vale. Or do you not remember the reason Kurenai was assigned to you? Sasuke deadpanned to the four girls, who suddenly paled as they remembered that factor they had forgotten about. Kurenai was still a bit upset with the team for the lunchroom fight they'd had yesterday. Exactly, Sasuke, Naruto nodded. So, Neptune, Sasuke, and Haku will go with Sneeze and Ruby. Kurama will go with Sun and Bell, but we'll separate after you guys get there so that we can gather information on his own. Sun gave Naruto a grateful thumbs up and grin while the fox fauna shook his head. And that conventionally leaves you and me together, Yang said with a grin. Naruto blinked. Well, I'll be damned, so it does. Almost as if you planned it that way, she said. Yang's eyes dropped slightly and she traced circles on Naruto's arms. Taking me out on the town, Whisker Boy. Considering you're the one with the ride, I think it's the other way around, Naruto said. He was excited to hitch a ride on his girlfriend's motorcycle. She snuck him in to see it one night, and he learned that it was probably his only competition for her affection. It was weird, but that was the same with Naruto and Ramen. Or Neptune could go with you guys, Ruby suggested. Five's a big number, and no, I'll go with you, Neptune said quickly as he covered Ruby's mouth with his hand and laughed nervously when Naruto gave him a smirk. The blonde couple were the first out the door, and Neptune quickly pulled his hand away from Ruby's mouth, wiping it on his pants. Gross, you licked my palm. What are you, 12? 15, actually, Ruby said with a frown. She crossed her arms and looked around the room. What's the big problem? Why should Neptune come with us and not them? They could need the backup. It was quiet before Sasuke, Kurama, Sun, and Haku burst into laughter. The other four in the room looked at the laughing boys in confusion. Sun wiped a tear away from his eye and sighed. That was nice. Thanks, Ruby. I needed that. Sun grinned. He looked at Kurama and then Blake before he gestured to the door. After you. Why, thank you, Kurama said with a smirk as he walked between his fellow faunus and left the room. Blake sighed. This is going to be an eventful night. I just know it. Kurama poked his head back into the doorway and smirked. What's the worst that could happen? End of chapter 12.